So, yeah, I wasn't going to do a presentation, but now I am, so here we go. I thought I would talk to you about the art of troubleshooting. Okay? Now, I don't know if you've had me speak before, but I often talk about troubleshooting. I often teach people about protocol analysis. I know some of you were with me for the last 3 days as we did a CWAP class, and we learned about Wi-Fi protocols. I love talking about Wi-Fi protocols, I love teaching about Wi-Fi protocols, but here's something I've often wondered. I can teach all of you in this room about Wi-Fi protocols. You can learn how they work, you can learn everything there is to know about how to use a protocol analyzer, all the button clicks, and yet sometimes you can have all that knowledge and people still can't troubleshoot. So why is that? Why is it that you can know all the knowledge, all the science, if you like, but still not be able to troubleshoot a network? And I see that a lot, and it got me thinking, and I think the thing is, I've come to the conclusion that troubleshooting is as much an art form as it is a science. Now, I don't know whether you class yourself as a scientist or an artist. I don't know what you think. I would definitely class myself more as a scientist. I did a computer science degree at university. That is definitely what I would call myself. Well, let's just show hands. Who would say they're a scientist here in the room? Just saying. And who would say they're an artist? Oh, there's a few of you. Okay. I hope we won't insult too many people then in this room. But when I was at university, actually, most of my friends were artists. They were doing music degrees, theatre degrees. I seem to be the one scientist out of all my friends. And I used to actually, I don't know whether this joke will translate too well, but we'll see. We used to always say a joke. I used to say, what's the difference between a science student and an art student at university? So, what's the first thing an art student says when they leave university? Would you like chips with that? So, I don't know what you think you're most likely at, but the truth is, actually, when you look at the human brain, the left side of the human brain is actually the logical, scientific part of the human brain. It's what we use for mathematical, analytical, and logical thinking. But the right-hand side of the brain is the artistic side, it's the creative side, the emotional side. So actually, when you really look at it, we all have both scientists and artists in us. And I know I berated my friends a lot when I was a student about them being artists and me being a scientist and the only intelligent one, etc., etc. But I have to admire their dedication and commitment to their art. They were really committed. We used to go around to a friend of mine's house. He was a violinist, and we used to go around and we used to sit there, and it was the same every time. We'd arranged to go out to the pub, and we went round to call on my friend, and we used to get invited in, sit down, as we heard him upstairs practicing his violin, which he did for 4 hours every single day. And eventually we would get bored, call up and say, Bob, we're going to the pub, we'll see you there. And so we didn't need to wait around for him to finish his 4-hour practice. And it was the same every single time. We'd eventually get there for last orders and have a drink with us. But he was really committed to that course, to practicing his art. So I want to tell you a bit of a story to try and put a context behind this presentation. And it's just a story of some troubleshooting I did. It's not very complex troubleshooting, it's quite simple, but hopefully it will illustrate my point of the art of troubleshooting. It was a customer of ours. They had just implemented a new wireless network in their warehouse. This was I think it was a 300 metre by 150 metre warehouse in the middle of the UK countryside. And they'd implemented a new Wi-Fi network. They had gone for a fully redundant 5 gigahertz design. Previously, they'd all been 2.4. So they had now 2 APs down every single aisle for redundancy with warehouse antennas. And they deployed something like, I think, 100 plus access points. And I think previously they'd had about 30 in this warehouse, just to give you an idea. But they wanted, why they phoned me up was they said, we'd really like someone on site when we do the cutover. We're going to be doing the cutover, and we're worried, what if something goes wrong? Could we have an engineer on site, just in case something goes wrong? Now, this cutover was going to be at 4 a.m. in the morning, because it's a 24/7 warehouse operation, and they said, that's probably the quietest time. So we'll do it from 4 a.m. till 6 a.m. The cutover, that's when we've got the change raised. If everything goes well, that's fine. If we can't get everything working in 2 hours, we'll have to roll back to the other Wi-Fi. So I was checked in with a colleague of mine, and we were talking and said, well, which engineer should we send to do this cutover? Now, I've got to admit, more recently, when it comes to doing surveys and design, I would rather send one of my junior engineers. I quite like them not going out on site every day nowadays. Just getting a bit too old for that, really. So I was like, 4 a.m. in the morning, don't really fancy going and taking up this job. But my colleague was going, yeah, but you're almost a senior engineer, and if something goes wrong, you're probably the best person to fix it. I was like, yeah, probably. Okay, I'll do it. You know, it was one of those things. So I decided to go on site. So picture this scene, okay? It's 4 a.m. in the morning, and I walk into the middle of a very cold warehouse in the middle of the English countryside with my cup of tea, hoping that I can just sit there quietly, sip my tea, while this network cutover happens, and I can sit there and just, you know, everything will go smoothly, and I can just leave and, you know, send in my bed. That was a herb. So I sit there, and the engineer from the customer was busy taking down APs, bringing up all the new APs, and I'm sat there with my cup of tea thinking, this is okay. Bit tired, but it's okay. And as he's bringing up all the new APs, I sort of thought, well, I should probably do something to at least, you know, justify my fee at the end of this. So I get on my laptop, I start doing a few protocol scans, I get on my G2 Net Ally, and I start looking at the wireless network, and he's bringing up stuff. And one of the things I noticed is there's a lot of co-channel interference, especially on the 2.4 gig band. Looking now on my G2, and I can see 20 APs all on the same channel, and I'm just stood in the centre of the warehouse, not moving. And there was 20 APs on channel 1, on channel 6, on channel 11. It was a busy network, okay? But it's a warehouse. You get lots of co-channel interference in a warehouse. Doesn't necessarily mean it's not going to work or anything's going to go wrong. So I asked the guy from the customer, I said, oh, how's it going? He said, yeah, we just brought up the last AP. I can see devices connecting. It seems to be going okay. Someone came over and said the wireless printers weren't connected, and he worked out that there was a MAC address list for the printers, and he hadn't copied that over to the new system, so that got copied over. The printers got connected, and I'm thinking, oh, this is all going quite well, everything. We can see new devices, it's all connecting. So I suggested, and we're getting about an hour into our time now. Okay, into our 2-hour window. So I suggest, why don't we get some devices and go for a bit of a walk around the warehouse? We'll see how they roam, make sure they connect okay. I did a protocol capture as we walked around, so I could see the devices when they were roaming. And we did a bit of a walk around. We also had a ping going to all these devices as well, just so we could see what the ping response time was. And as we walked around, I could see them. They were roaming. Okay, not brilliantly. They were, because there was so much Wi-Fi, they were taking quite a long time to roam. They weren't roaming as often as I would like, but it was okay. But one thing I did notice was all the devices were connected at 2.4 gigahertz. All of them. This was a brand new 5 gigahertz redundant design, and all the clients connected at 2.4. And I was like, why is that? And we realised because the old network was the only way they got full coverage was on 2.4, they didn't have full 5 gig coverage. These devices had been programmed to only connect at 2.4. Okay? So they were connected only at 2.4, but okay, fair enough, but that doesn't mean there's a problem necessarily. And the ping time was incredibly slow. It was about 200 milliseconds. Okay, so it was a slow ping time. But then, you know, how much performance does a barcode scanner need? Might be okay. We get back to the central control area in the centre of the warehouse, and there's someone waiting for us. And he said, "Oh, wireless printing is really, really slow. They have these," and he took us to a colleague, and what they do is they scan a barcode and it prints normally a label out, and they stick the label on the crate, and that's basically what they do. But they were scanning the barcode and then waiting. Normally it's instantaneous, they said, and then within, 8-9 seconds, I would pop the label. And they were like, "That's just too slow, it's going to slow operations." And I said, "Well, how was it at the old system, the system that's been replaced?" I said, "Oh, it's almost straight away, you scan it back, the label comes out." So I'm like, okay, what shall we do here now? And by this time we had 30 minutes now left of this cutover time. So that was an issue. Now, I did fix the issue, and I'm going to tell you why in a minute. But let's just fast forward to when I get back to the office the next day. I'm chatting through the events, and I'm talking to my colleague, and he went, "Told you were the best person to go in and fix it. No one else would have fixed that in half an hour." And I was like, it's a little bit of a "told you so" moment. But I went, I think he's right. The thing that annoyed me was he was probably right. And it made me start wondering, well, why was he right? Because all my engineers are certified. There's CWNA, I've got some CWAPs, they've done ECHA certifications. They all are trained. They all have, and I know they all have the knowledge to have done exactly what I did. Every single one of them. So why is it that I think he was probably right that none of them would have actually fixed the problem in half an hour? And you see, this is when I started coming to the conclusion that, yes, they had the science part of troubleshooting, they knew all the Wi-Fi knowledge, but what that was lacking was the art of troubleshooting in them. So that's what I want to talk to you a little bit about today. Now, when we talk about the art of troubleshooting, I run at my local church, I run a night, Peace and Pool night. We do what it suggests, we peace and we play pool, okay? And I was there just before I first gave this presentation, and I was talking about it with one of them, and they looked a bit confused, and I said, well, listen, it's a bit like pool. You can know the science of pool, can't you? You could know how fast the cloth runs and the balls go on the cloth. You can know the size of the ball. You can know exactly where to hit the cue ball to get the right amount of backspin. Okay, you can know all the science between while playing pool. That doesn't mean you can get down and play the perfect shot. Because getting down and playing the perfect shot requires lots and lots and lots of practice. Not just the knowledge of how big the balls are, where to hit the ball. And I said, and that's where the art comes in. Take my friend who plays the violin. I remember going to see him at a concert. He was the first violinist for the National Youth Orchestra in the UK. And we went to watch him, went to see him in concert, and he was doing a solo. And he started doing his solo, and halfway through his solo, one of his strings snapped. He just carried on. He transposed all the notes onto other strings and carried on with his solo. As if it, wasn't a problem. He only had 3 strings now on his violin. It was impressive. But you see, you can know the theory that you can transverse notes onto other strings. You can even know the theory of how to do it. But to do it while playing a solo in front of 200 people watching, that's art, isn't it? That's because he practiced 4 hours every single day, and he had done for most of his life. That's why he could do that. And that's what I want to talk about in terms of the art of troubleshooting. There's something different just about having knowledge, but being able to actually use that knowledge in practice is where the art side comes in. So let's go back to my warehouse. Why was it I was able to diagnose a problem which others couldn't? And the more I thought about this question, the more I realised was, actually, troubleshooting is all about asking the right questions. It's not necessarily just about knowing the right answers. Okay? And I realised that if I took one of my engineers on site with me, had one been on site with me, and if I sat them down and asked them a series of questions, they would have given me the right answers and fixed the problem in the same time I would have done. The only thing that was lacking, maybe, is they wouldn't have asked themselves the right questions. And I think that's the difference. So, let's go back to the warehouse then. I've got 30 minutes to fix this problem. I know that there's a lot of co-channel interference, especially on 2.4. There's a bit of co-channel interference on 5 gig as well, but especially 2.4. Because I could see that every single AP, all these 100 access points, had both 2.4 and 5 gig radius turned on. So I knew that. I also knew that the ping time was 200 milliseconds. So where do I go? What questions do I ask myself to be able to fix this problem? Well, I'm going to go through the questions that went on in my head. Okay? So here you get a little insight into my head when troubleshooting. And I believe these questions are simple questions. I probably believe a lot of people in this room could answer these questions. It's all about asking the right questions. So my first question was, is the issue just related to 2.4? Because we know all the devices are connecting on 2.4. Is it a 2.4 gig issue? Well, I don't know, do I? Maybe nothing's connected on 5 gig, so how do I know if it's 2.4 only? Okay, so how do I find out that answer? Well, I said, could we put the devices on 5 gig? And they said, well, to put them all on 5 gig, that's going to take a change by the client team. And we don't have anyone from the client team here. They've got to change the device profile. But we could log on to one device, just as a test, and stick it onto 5 gig network. So that's what we did. We took one of the devices, we connected to it, and we changed it to operate on 5 gigahertz. And then I took that device and I walked around the warehouse and did the same sort with a ping running to it, just to see how would it perform. So this was really the next question. Does the issue exist if clients get to 5 gig band? That's what I wanted to know. So we tested with one client, and basically the answer was no. It doesn't. We were getting about a 5 millisecond ping response time on 5 gig. So much better, from 200 milliseconds down to 5. So that tells me that the wired infrastructure is good enough that the APs are connected to, because of the same pin, but it is going over the same wired networks to the same APs, but actually on 5 gig it works well. So it does seem to be a 2.4 gig issue. Okay? So what do? Say, change all your plans to 5 gig, I'm going home, thank you very much.
Half an hour work.
I charge by the day, not the hour. Okay, so it'd be at least a day's work. I could say that, but they've already told me they can't do that. They need to raise a change with the client team, and we've only got 25 minutes left. So that would result in them turning off all the new Wi-Fi, going back to the system. So we can't do that. All we can do is change the Wi-Fi settings. So what else could I do to help fix this problem? Well, next question. What's causing? I know there's a problem with 2.4. Is it non-Wi-Fi interference? Is there some interference in a warehouse? Could be. Let's rule that out at least. So we do a spectrum analysis and we realise that no, there is no excessive interference in 2.4 gig band. Which would make sense because they've been using 2.4 on the old system, haven't they? So that would make sense. But it's good to confirm. No 2.4 gig interference. Next question. Do we just have too many 2.4 gig radios? I've seen excessive co-channel interference. Is that the problem? It could be, couldn't it? Yeah. So what do I do about that? Disabled some. So I went around, I took the plan out, and I literally disabled every other access point 2.4 gig radio. We turned 50% of them off. Okay? Across the entire warehouse. So we knew there was too many radios. 50% radios off, we did another test. What do we see? 150 milliseconds. So it's got better, the ping, but it's not great. Okay? It's got better, but it's not great. So where do we go from here? What's the next question? Power? Call Peter. Yeah? Great. You can come again. I am available for hire. That's fine. You can call me.
Look for retries.
Look for retries, possibly. Yeah. Yeah. We could look for but we're trying to fix this problem. We could look for retries. Well, here's a question. What is the biggest cause of congestion in high code channel contention, I prefer than interference environments? When you've got lots of APs on the same channel.
Low data rates.
Low data rates, why do you say that?
Overhead takes a long time.
Because what, sorry?
Overhead takes a long time.
Overhead takes a long time. We are talking about management overhead. When you've got low data rates enabled, things like beacon frames, management frames, control frames go off the lowest data rate. And if that's 1 meg, 6 meg, they're going to take a long time. And when you've got lots of APs on the same channel all trying to do management frames, that produces a lot of contention. That's one of the biggest causes. Having that knowledge is the thing that helped me to fix this problem. That one correction. So my next question, how do we reduce management frame overhead?
Faster mandatory rates.
We increase the minimum basic data rate, yes. That is what we need to do. So my next question, what is the current minimum basic data rate in 2.4 gig in this network? It was 1 megabits per second, that is correct.
Was it previous also?
What, sorry?
Previously, on the previous network?
I believe it had been previously, but they only had about 30 APs. Now they've got over 100.
Yeah, but you disabled half of them.
Yeah, so they've now got about 53. Still quite a lot. Anyway, what was it? It was 1 megabits per second. So what do we use?
12. Let's go to 6.
I like 12. That's a good answer. But first of all, it depends, doesn't it? Because I don't know what clients they necessarily need to use. So, you know, first of all, are there any 802.11b only devices? I need to ask that question first. If I just go turning off data rates, I could get into trouble. Yeah. Okay? So I asked the question, is there any 802.11b data rates? Devices that only do B. The answer was no. I looked at all the clients. They only actually had about 6 of different types of clients, and they were all capable of higher, at least G. Okay? However, experience tells me to ask another question. Will any of the devices not operate without 802.11b data rates? That is an issue I've seen before. Okay? I don't know. You're exactly right. How do I know? I've got a test. Absolutely right. So I'm going to test it. So I disable the 802.11b data race just so we can test it. And what's the result? My ping time has now suddenly gone down to 25 milliseconds. And all my devices are still working. That is a result. Yeah? From 200 milliseconds to 25, that's a pretty good result.
Still not 5 hours.
But, as someone said, what data rate do I want to go down to? I'm now at 6 megabits.
It's possible.
Yeah.
As high as possible.
Ideally, I would like to at least be 12. Okay? So, we do another test at 12 megabits per second. So now we turn off all data rates below 12 megabits per second, and we do another test. And I'm at 50 milliseconds. And we are now very, very tight on time, as you can imagine. I walk up, so now I go and talk to the clients, and they show me, they scan a barcode, the label comes out, they stick it on the package, and they're happy. And we fix their issue. It wasn't hard, okay? If you answer the right questions, you can get to the solution quite quickly. But it's all about asking the right questions. And I think that's ultimately where it comes from. Knowing the answer to these questions, that's the science. Being able to ask the right questions, that's the art. And that's what I'm going to leave you with. Thank you very much.